Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. So, today I wanted to kind of do a nice little Reddit video and read this post and like talk to you guys about certain things that I see happening. I feel like I'm transitioning out of the mids at this point. And part of it is I've been having like a lot of migraines recently, which it has to do with hormone fluctuation, which I think will change kind of the emotional quality that I have as the hormones start to become more normal. I told you guys I was having less dopamine issues, which I think is part of a mid issue. I also think I'm making my way through the 230s at this point. I think the thin era, so to speak, when I become thick, it will probably be at some point within the 220s. And then I enter into the vanity weight era around that time. Somewhere around there. So we're getting close. It's starting to get close. I still am mid. I still identify as mid, but I can see the end in sight. It was interesting as I was filming the video with Eric last night. My wand ran out of ink, which I felt like was kind of symbolic. And these migraines and stuff, it's kind of symbolic. Like I can tell things are shifting because with the migraines, it also means I'm going to start deswelling. So things could look kind of dramatic over the next couple months because I'll probably start losing a lot of water weight. And there's just a lot of factors that I can kind of tell things are changing. And so as I get to this point where I'm going to start identifying as thin pretty soon, I want to, consider this stuff. And also, like I told you, or like I said, just kind of prepare myself, because I think it's a big step. It's a thing where it's still kind of subjective, but I know that there's a spectrum within thinness too. So I do want to talk about that when I get to that era, because that also exists as well. There are different types of thin, which we'll get into that later. But I am just kind of exasperated by the mids. I'm also kind of surprised that it's gonna come to a close. And I'm just like, holy crap, because it really has felt like it was never gonna end. And it's still not over, but I feel the end coming. I don't know how else to describe it. I can kind of tell that it's going to end soon. So with that, as I have this mini grain tonight, and I still have to go to the gym tonight, which sucks. I'm sorry, I just don't want to, but I'm going to. I have to do some upper body. It's my bonus day. So I have to do some upper body stuff, but let's go ahead and get into this. So, how did you get used to being thin? New to this sub, really enjoy reading all your stories and shared challenges. I was raised in an obese family, fat from my earliest memories. My whole life I was scared of people looking at me, being in photos, videos, hated myself, hated my reflection, pulled my shirt down all the time in case my stomach poked out. In particular, just always hated my stomach. Always super aware of it. I think they meant anyways. Lost it all 3 years ago. Dropped 50 kg by eating one small meal a day. Put back on 20, now going down again. Okay. I guess I should respond to this. I would say to be careful about the toxic ritualistic. It's not good to have such fluctuations from, I'm just saying, like, it's a little bit of a warning sign. I'm just going to say that this person probably needs to do some mental work for sure. Okay. Weight loss can only be maintained through self-love. Self-hate will likely lead to bad relationships with food and exercise. I recommend looking into body neutrality and finding love for your former self before the weight loss. You absolutely have the same worth whether or not you are perceived as thin. Thanks for the response. I wouldn't say this is self-hate. It's more that I look in the mirror and still see a fat person. Nobody else seems to, but I still do, and I'm wondering if anyone has experienced the same. So I'm going to talk about this. I don't really identify as fat anymore. I've told you guys that. I stopped in February, and I really think the midsize phase, it helped me. I know people hate it, but I think they hate it because it does work. It worked. I was divorcing from fatness socially and identity-wise, and it worked. I've been calling myself mid all year long, and I don't see a fat person in the mirror. I see mid when I look in the mirror, I think that creating a distinction and a stepping stone, it has really helped me on a psychological level. And so I'm used to no longer identifying as fat when it's appropriate. And I think that I will continue to say it has been a very good step and very helpful because it helps to communicate it to others. It helps to communicate it to yourself. And it is very psychological in my opinion. But I don't see myself struggling in that way. I just don't, because I just don't think of myself as fat. I don't. I think of myself as mid. So like when I'm frustrated about certain things aesthetically, I'm just like, ugh, like I'm so mid or whatever. It's like I'll go up and down like in terms of my opinion on how I look. Like sometimes like my friend Eric makes fun of me because in the daytime I'll feel confident and then at night I don't. It's really weird. But at the end of the day, I've grown accustomed to not identifying with fatness. I've divorced myself from fatness. I don't identify as a fat person. I just don't. And I think it's really important to understand how subjective it actually is. It's very subjective. And I do make the distinction of what it is. I think mid has more to do with, being overweight, basically. Slightly overweight or overweight. It has more to do with aesthetics rather than functionality. To me, fatness involves functional issues that need to be accommodated, whereas midness doesn't. Midness is aesthetic for the most part. Although there are still health issues, particularly if you're in the lower end of obesity, or higher end of overweight, there is still some health stuff, but it's just so low that it's different. It's just very different because your lifestyle, like my lifestyle, will not necessarily be different when I'm thin. It'll be the same. I couldn't say that a year ago. My lifestyle from being super morbidly obese to today is drastically different. Almost everything is different. And to me, that has more to do with fatness. It's a little bit less superficial. And I think that people can really describe it better. Like, for example, I don't get out of breath when I go upstairs. Nothing like that. I don't even have that at all. I don't have knee pain. I don't have certain things that are associated with fatness. So I think about it logically in that way, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just not. I don't have to feel super confident all the time. I can understand that I'm mid and just deal with it. And that it is also going to end, but it's an easier jump from fat to mid and mid to thin. It's just easier. I think people get caught up on going from fat to thin, and so they just stay identifying as fat. which I think it kind of robs you of the joy of the work that you've worked on, and it encourages a bitterness. It encourages holding on to things and stuff like that in a way that I think is very negative. So I get that I think about this differently than a lot of people, but remember, I am an activist, so I'm pushing a different way on purpose because, in my opinion, it has been effective. It has. I already don't identify as such. So I don't think I'm going to have an issue when I'm thin. Which of course, the first step of the thins is going to be, I call it thicky thin. It's where you're kind of thick, but you still look better, basically. I don't know how else to say it. And you don't have that same connotation of being mid. You just don't. And you'll see. I'll tell you when I'm there. I'm not there now. I think I'm at least a month away, at least. But anyways, you guys know I call things right when it happens. So when you look at this channel, probably by September, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But anyways, let's continue. Remember, it takes our brains a long time to catch up once we've lost the weight. I was considered enormous when I was a teenage kid in the late 80s. I'm 5'10", and I weighed 200 pounds back then. After I had my first child, I lost about 30 pounds and kept it off for about 20 years. I never thought I was thin. Okay. Yeah, I think that's okay at 5'10", for sure. Then I farted around with yo-yo dieting and would go on the latest diet out there once or twice a year. I hit middle age and gained about 60 pounds. I was my heaviest at 220. I weighed that after I had been doing calories in, calories out for a month. So I have no idea just how much I weighed at my actual heaviest back in 2017. It took me a solid 2 years, but I had lost 90 pounds by 2019. At 5'10", I weighed 130 pounds, and although I was not underweight, I was considered thin. Okay. Yeah, that's definitely, I would consider that kind of slender. I've maintained that weight loss ever since. So about 6 years of being thin. After a life of being overweight, on the heavier side and class 1 obese, I couldn't see it. Oh, sure, I saw myself in the mirror and could say I'm thin, but as soon as I wasn't in front of a mirror, I went right back to feeling fat. This went on for far too long. It was a struggle to be in maintenance and not think I needed to lose weight. I had to remind myself that I no longer needed to lose weight. So I think this is really important too. I think the mid phase is very helpful in a lot of ways that I think it's very underrated. And I am going to be, as I leave the mids, I will be talking about it. But this is a major thing because what identifying as mid and what this phase has enabled me to do is to think about post-weight loss as I'm still losing, to think about what's next, because there will be a time where I stop, and to even start looking forward to being done and start kind of transitioning the way that I think about things. As I told you guys, my overall goals became a lot less about the scale in the mids because it became more about just general fat loss and muscle building and these types of things. It transitioned. It's an in-between phase that I think is very, very helpful for people because it's really hard for people to change. I think people get caught up in the mids and they can't handle that the journey's different. Something that I've struggled with a lot in the mids is the difference between having to have constant emotional regulation, constantly holding back my feelings and all these things and keeping myself sane from my super morbid phase where the way that I felt, the hypothyroidism, everything else was so chaotic that I could not deal. I couldn't deal with it. So I had to, I had to regulate how I felt and not listen to how I felt so often. And in the mids, that changed, where all of a sudden I wasn't as hypo anymore. My health was better. My emotions were just realistic. And I started suppressing realistic emotions in a way that was causing a lot of confusion from other people, as I've looked at videos from March and February and even January when I was doing my health playlists and stuff, and I come across as extremely cold during those months. And it was so bizarre, I think, for a lot of people in my life, and it led to a lot of projection and these types of things, which I just didn't understand what was happening. And I reached a fever pitch in March, and I learned I had to start really looking at my feelings and paying attention to them more and diving into them more and expressing them more and putting it out there. And that it started to become a way of getting satisfaction in life, getting dopamine, getting all of these things that I needed rather than a suppression. But that was a huge shift, and it was difficult for me personally because I didn't trust my emotions. I couldn't, because my emotions used to be so clouded by hypothyroidism and toxic ritualistic mindsets that they weren't real. But then they became real. So using this phase to adjust the goals, to adjust everything, it's been instrumental to my long-term success. Getting rid of resistance-based weight loss, which is a major part of losing from a super morbid place. You have to resist your super morbid obesity. It's very difficult, and you have to think about the negatives or you won't be motivated to keep going. To start to shift and start thinking about the positives and start thinking about non-resistance based weight loss. So like encouragement and weight loss and these types of things. And all those different types of goals, it has helped. Having experiences with trips or vacations or resting points, times where I haven't counted, like in March of 2025, in April when I went to Austin. These experiences, they gave me glimpses into a maintenance phase, glimpses into a post-weight loss life that have been extremely helpful. I did much better with it in April than I did in March. And I'm sure I'll continue to do much better with it in July when I go and I have another break from the deficit in July for my birthday. So it's like, when I think about it this way, it has worked very well. You have to start to process and think about, what am I going to do after? And it can feel very daunting. And there has been times where I felt daunted throughout the mids thinking about it. But as I've worked on it, I don't feel daunted. I'm looking forward to it now. I'm looking forward to maintenance. I'm relieved that it's coming rather than fearful, because I've been in touch with my feelings now, because I can, because they're not disordered. So it's a lot in the mids. It's a lot of difficulty. There's a lot of pressures on people that are mid-size, a lot of pressures to be emotionally dishonest, a lot of pressures to hide how we feel, a lot of pressures to create boundaries and these types of things. It's tricky. It's a tricky phase. But I think I've navigated it pretty well, honestly. Getting to the end of it, I can see that I did a good job, because I already don't identify as fat. I'm already looking forward to maintenance. I'm at peace with it. It doesn't freak me out or bother me at all. I don't have fear of regain. I don't have any fear of it at all. Zero. I don't think about the process that much. I don't think about these things that much at all. And I think that that's really healthy. Where I do get kind of irritated is just how often I go to the gym and, these types of things and certain aesthetic things. But again, I can trust my feelings now. And I try to get as acquainted with my new body as possible in this mid phase, because then it won't be that hard. Like, I look in the mirror now and I think, okay, I am getting closer out of the mids. I can tell it's changing. And I've also spent a lot of time building a lot of muscle, which has been so helpful. I think it helps on a hormonal level. It helps on a physical level. It just helps drastically for your longevity. And you can put a bunch of muscle on because of certain factors in your body, like having excess fat on you still and all these things. It makes it easier to put muscle on. So you can put that muscle on even while losing still. And it's good. But a lot of people try to rush out of the mids as fast as they can. And I don't think it's good, because you kind of give up on this opportunity to build a lot of muscle. And you give up on an opportunity to set yourself up for maintenance better. That's my thoughts. I had to remind myself that I no longer needed to lose weight. Finally, about 4 years ago, it started sinking in. I can't say I woke up one morning and it hit me, but being on the thin side was finally sinking into my brain. I started to be what I thought of myself. My brain was catching up. I would think things like, this cold weather sure is hard on this skinny old lady, or I wonder what kind of jeans would look good on a tall, thin woman. It wasn't a huge epiphany. It slowly soaked into the cracks of my brain. I talked about this with my mom, who had lost significant weight years and years before, and she said, yeah, you had fat brain. Some folks might catch on sooner, but I'm a slow learner, and it took me a good 2 years before I finally had a thin brain. I had a lifetime of at least feeling fat to contend with, and blamed that for my slow change of mind. I can honestly say I finally am and feel thin. I'm used to being thin. Yeah, and I think that that's better. I think, too, you just have to allow yourself to navigate that lack of weight blindness that comes in the mids. You have to allow yourself to navigate all these different things and create a more realistic perception of you. And you can't let other people's views of it cloud it too much, because a lot of people are toxically ritualistic and they will tell you what you look like, and they might not be correct. So you have to just really kind of assert yourself and figure it out in this phase. That's my opinion. And it's very subjective. It is. It's hard to categorize. Sometimes winning feels uncomfortable. I never did figure out why I felt that way too, but I did eventually get over it after 3 or 4 years. It was around then when I started getting comments along the lines of, dang man, I can barely remember you looking like that. I was at least 100 pounds overweight my whole teen/adult life, often more. This also around when I had everyday people in my life that were important to me that never met me when I was obese. To them, this is me. And that struck me when I realized it. This is me. This is me, motherfucker. I started to feel more comfortable in my own skin after that, and even starting weightlifting, an activity that requires a complete surplus, a calorie surplus. It's been 7 years since I started dieting. I've been on a diet for 7 years, and you know what? I'm cool with it. I treat myself as a recovering ice cream addict. And I've forgiven myself for my past, and have moved on to new journeys. And I think that that's, for me, I don't identify with addiction. I just don't. I think there's so many reasons why I don't. I think the biggest one is it's just not effective. I think that it also can set people up to relapse. I think it can also set people up to obsess over their toxic ritualistic mindsets even after they've lost weight and all this stuff, or possibly transfer to another one. There's all these things that can happen within this sphere. Whereas, as I've told you guys many times, I have completely rejected the toxic ritualistic. I don't go with it whatsoever at all. So when I think about what is thin, what is mid, what is this, I view it as objectively subjective as I can. I mean, it is based on time and place, but it's also like I don't have these crazy standards. Or I don't view things in this extremely black and white way. Like I said, we're going to go into the thicky thin era. It's different, but you're still thin. You know, you're thick. So it's like, it probably may upset some people, but I don't really care. You know, it's my life and it's subjective as hell. And for me, even body fat percentage wise, I'm really getting lower. You know, at this moment, I need to see what happens when I weigh in Thursday. But as of last week, I was 28.6. If I get under 25, anything after that is subjective, or it's very vanity based. That's a clear bill of health as far as fat percentage, you know, and even getting close to it. Like if I get to 26, or not 26, but like, yeah, or 26.0, basically being within a percentage, it's kind of close enough to where it, especially socially, it's different, you know, so I'm getting close here. That's what I'm trying to say. So, I don't know. I have seen some social changes. I've seen people really test my boundaries a lot and stuff. I think it's still pretty mid, but it's starting to stop. I think I just kind of asserted myself, you know, very aggressively, and I think it worked, basically. But yeah, I think something has changed within me. El Flopba is changing. I feel like it's ending. It's interesting. Looking at my body and finding things to appreciate has been helpful. Now I see my broad shoulders and long legs instead of focusing too much on my stomach. Lifting weights is also another great way to start to love the way you look, although you definitely need to be careful to not overdo it. Body image issues are common in the gym. If none of this helps, I suggest looking into therapy. Even something like an hour once a week for a month may give you a new perspective on things. You have to come into it open-minded and willing to change your beliefs, so it can be difficult. Yeah, I think it's just, I would agree with this comment for the most part, for sure. I agree. Can't say I ever been obese, however, from reading your posts seems more like a mind game and an emotional one. Instead of focusing on a particular part of your body, look at the entire body. This reminds me of the book called The Body Keeps the Score. An ultra simple but with extremely high impact practice in all areas of our life is to feel the entire body as one. Sounds simple, but usually the simplest exercises are the hardest as the mind gets bored and starts to produce stuff. Years later, when I started this, I could barely feel two parts at once, like feeding calves. With time, I would go around the body on next section and just feel that part. Some felt more intense than others. Others felt like no sensation is there. With time, the mind relaxed from expectations and we get aware of the sensations. Sensations are always there. We are not paying attention, if that makes sense. Maybe that is for you as well. And congrats on your progress. I tried to feel a body part and I can't feel anything except the things touching it. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. As a 54-year-old who has been both fat and thin, it feels pretty much the same. That whole thing about nothing tastes as good as thin feels is a lie, in my opinion. Maybe focus on the specific things your body can do and fit in at a lower weight. Maybe you can cross your legs or can curl up on a chair now. Maybe try on your old clothes or belts. Maybe try to be aware of your body moving, how your thighs may not rub anymore, how you can look down and see your toes, how you can tuck in your shirt and not have a bulge. Body awareness exercises. I don't know if I agree with this person. So to me, I think it can, body obsession is not great. You know, I'm not one who's like, oh, you're totally going to like really do everything. But I think encouraging people, you don't necessarily know where people are at. Like I monitor, but like I said, I monitor probably within 5 minutes in a day. It's very short. It's like a very short amount of time. which I think is healthy, especially for me at this stage. It's just very healthy. So I'm aware of where I'm at, but I don't always do all that stuff constantly. So I think that that's just something to be aware of. Don't do it all the time. I don't think it's bad, but it's like, don't obsess, is what I'm trying to say. Some people book photo shoots to capture their thin self once they once idealized it, their full body, not the stubborn bit of belly fat or whatever. Thinness is kind of like success. It appears to be definable when you don't have it, but not when you do. One might focus on the things that are missing than the grand picture. That's interesting. I liked that point. TLDR is how I looked in clothes, and now it's remembering how much better I felt without so much excess weight. I always thought I was fat in high school and college, and it really lowered my self-esteem and confidence. Turns out I was not fat, but I only realized that after I actually became fat in my early 20s and started noticing the difference in photos. I was 5'6", 212 at my worst. So I just continued feeling fat in my 20s, except now with proof that it was true. 6 years ago, I fixed my crap diet, which was canes, pizza, and ice cream, and I started jogging. I lost 75 pounds, but I've now gained back about 40 pounds, again with the canes. So I'm trying to normalize my relationship with food and exercise again. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this. I'm just not. It's like, to me, it's just bizarre to be like, I'm really trying to fix my relationship with breathing. It's too emotional. I think it keeps people in that toxic ritualistic world. It's hard sometimes to believe that I'm not a fat failure or wallow in self-pity, that I can't eat everything I want. For me, when I was at my lowest weight, I didn't believe I was skinny until I was trying on clothes and realized that most things looked okay. Form-fitting dresses that I would never have tried if my husband hadn't handed it to me in the dressing room. I tried on and realized I didn't look fat, no matter how hard I tried to think I looked fat. I also noticed the rolls on my back no longer had creases. They were just gentle bulges like many healthy humans have. Hang in there, we got this. It won't be easy, instant, or comfortable at the start, but I know it will be worth it. The feeling of being able to run was so freeing. I want that back. If you need help feeling skinny, maybe focus on how your body feels and what you can do rather than what you think you see in the mirror. My knees hurt a bit now after a couple miles of walking, and I'm pretty sure it's because of the excess weight I have. I'm also more out of breath now than when I lost the weight. I'm expecting both of those to improve as I lose weight and exercise regularly. I'm excited to feel that improvement. My goal is to run a 5K without any walking breaks by next March, which I've never been able to do before, even at my best 5 years ago. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. So that's kind of my thoughts. I think some of the social aspects will be difficult for me. They always are. So I wouldn't say I'm there now. I'd say I'm getting there. Like, I'm transitioning, basically. That's what I will tell you guys. I feel it. I can tell I'm transitioning. I feel like I was my most mid between March and May. It was awful. It was awful. I think April was the eye of mid for me. It was just like, whoa. Especially late April. But, I'll keep y'all posted. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about this topic. I will talk to you guys again tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye.